Good evening, everyone. My name is Maura Keefe. I'm one of the scholars in residence here, and it is my privilege to be able to have a conversation with Brian Brooks.
I'd say it's my pleasure to have a conversation with you, Maura.
Thank you.
Thanks for staying and coming.
I've been thinking about your work for a long time, so it's so great to have you be back here at the Pillow and back in this, not back in this theater, in this theater. I want to talk about all the works, and I want to go in reverse order. So we'll see the...
I like reverse.
Because that's the oldest piece, and then we'll finish with the newest piece, which premiered last night. So the Closing Distance, a stunning, beautiful work for the company, and they danced it beautifully tonight. I was thinking... You were here, as Pam said in her opening remarks, during a bubble residency, and then we saw it on the Lear stage in maybe 23. But this is the first time we're seeing it here in maybe the way you intended. And I wonder if you could say something about the kind of the life of the piece and how it changes depending on where we are in the moment and how the space itself has an impact on that.
Thanks for that question and overview. I think it changes in at least two ways. One is for us as the artists and performers of the work, and the other's for you as the viewers of the work. Because I think your perception and the day and the climate and the social situation and the weather and your personal stories all impact, I believe, how you interface with a work of art and interface with the dance. I think some of the work we do is quite formal, meaning we're trying to look at the modes of construction and how we put things together and velocity and speed and contact and what happens if I push you and the results of that. So there's sort of a simplicity sometimes in the tasks on the stage, which I think sometimes also leaves open for your story, right? So that was interesting in COVID, right? Because all of a sudden the work had this. I had already started it and made a lot of it and was restructuring things, but all of a sudden touching and being close to each other just had this other meaning. Although the dance was not initially, it's not about that. So I find that interesting. And then now we're in this place, so we have other things to think about and I think change the work because of the viewers. For us as dancers, I actually said to them right before the performance tonight, we were rehearsing and actually doing a section from that as a warm-up, and it was kind of clunky and it was tense, and I said there's tension here, and that the choreographic work is intentionally about having to react and respond in the present moment. So it's so congested and it's so integrated and you're so dependent on everybody in the system that you have to be able to be okay with that someone's going to be late and someone's going to be early, and you have to respond and not be angry about it, right? So there's something.
You mean you can't? No one dancer can be the boss and saying you have to do it my way, because every relationship has an impact on somewhere else on this stage or something that's going to happen.
And I guess in the sense of your initial question about how does this change over time, or what's different about a piece that you do a lot of times, and as we were warming up, there was sort of it was as if we were putting the bodies where they were last night, because it was beautiful last night, right? So they're kind of trying to reiterate what we did last night, and it was just feeling not authentic. Mm-hmm. And I said, it's not going to be what it was last night. Mm-hmm. And next week it won't be what it was today, right?
Oh, so the liveness of live performance.
So we try. So I think with the older work, there's something really sometimes frustrating, but sometimes beautiful, because you have to keep finding it as if it's the first time you're doing it. Mm-hmm.
So I want to switch now to the second newest work on the program, Could We Be Quiet? You made this piece for Miami City Ballet. And one of the things I was really drawn to in watching it at dress rehearsal and then last night and again tonight is the way you have helped us become kind of almost intimate with these dancers, because ballet dancers are trained to the back of the house, and this one, you make us come to them. And could you talk a little bit about working with the dancers to to release some of their training and to do the work the way you wanted it to be done?
Yeah, we talk about it a lot. I'm not sure. I was thinking we spoke different languages, and I'm not sure we do, right? So, I'm wondering about that. I said to, working with Jason Macarena is such a privilege. I can only go as far choreographically as the dancers are going to go, right? And I always hope they're going to go further and faster, higher and broader than I can go. So with the dancers you saw tonight, they all do that. They propel me. They're kind of like, I feel like I'm holding on to their coattails, and we're just like riding. So there's kind of a give and take. But with Jason Macarena, they said, actually, they're very happy to be here, and it's amazing to have them incorporated in this. But they said, we aren't trained contemporary, and we see your dancers, and they're really into the earth, and I talk a lot about the undercurve and that it's more important to fall than to fly. I like to fly, but only so you can see us drop, right? I don't want to see the peak.
But that's what you want with your dancers. That's not necessarily what you want with dancers who aren't about gravity in the same way.
Right, but there's the question, right? So we spoke about this just last night, that they are sort of showing another facet of the same physical principle we're doing in our work. They're dealing with balance, right? So I'm an expert of off balance, right? I just want to fall and land all the time. So my exploration is from this amount of space down, right? So it's here's where I feel I'm that's where the dance is. So I'm always I never start here. I'm okay, now we have some momentum, we have some things. Ballet, they're doing the same thing. They're just really good at the balancing part, yes. Right? So they're trained, she's on point, right? So it's the least amount of your body you can have on the floor at one time. So I've asked them to just show us how they get there and how they leave it. So we have this kind of heightened experience with them that it's fine-tuning one of the things that's already in the work. So I find it incredibly related. So that's where we kind of live in the studio, right? And
it's the conversation, the movement conversation you're having with them and building it, which brings us to the newest work. And I want to talk about the dancing in a moment. But first, I actually want to talk about your relationship with Jerome Beguine, the composer. And I was thinking about the difference between, because you've worked with him before, you've collaborated with him before.
This is our 5th or 6th collaboration, yeah.
Versus Kevin Putz, the composer for the ballet pas de deux, which that's like an arranged marriage. They brought you together. You learned about each other in the doing of the thing. But you and Jerome already had a relationship. Could you talk about how you were starting? How did he arrive at the 4 instruments? What the conversation started like? Yeah,
thank you for that. We wanted to do this mixed program also to just show, for me, I enter into these art projects and collaborations in very different ways. And that was a bit of a matchmaking with New World Symphony and Miami City Ballet, where they just paired us and they just sent me the music just a couple weeks before I made it. So it was a wild kind of thing. I had fun with it. But yeah, my relationship with Jerome goes back over 10 years, and I was getting into, so there's a few things, I was getting into with this work, digital interfaces and trying to see how the body could interact and respond. And we were talking about electronics and systems and networks. And Jerome does it mostly in a lot of electronic work. And even he works with instruments, but does electronic. So I was oh, he's perfect. But in the first few conversations, the real heart of the work was to feel the human body and to feel the breath and the presence of the person and the form through the extension of the body as I see it with technology. So kind of not just replacing it, but somehow to kind of lengthen the potential of sense and space with the tech. So I've been wondering about brass for a while, and I said, what do you think of brass? And he immediately was like, that sounds wild. And we thought the juxtaposition could do something interesting and less predictable than electronics, kind of matching the digital, but we thought, and I think it does, really resonate through the space, right? Those horns just give us volume and dimension. And so I feel like it helps me to see the digital blending a little bit more with the body and kind of feel like we're in some kind of environment.
There's also something about the effort of it, like that their breath is just as important as the breath of the dancers. And so it does kind of ground it in the humanity, as you mentioned. I mean, I think we got to talk about the technology because it's beautiful and it's so beautifully choreographed and live made by you, which we'll talk about in a second. But first, let's talk about cables, because those dancers, I love it. Like the choreography of the cables, like the dancers have, they have all kinds of other information that they have to be thinking about. The specificity of where to be in space, getting things out of the way of each other at the same time as they're remembering brand new material and who am I dancing with now, and all of the things that are always present. Could you just talk a little bit about the negotiation of, oh yeah, this is also going to be your job?
Yeah, I mean, it's brand new. It's very exciting to be here and launch something new. And have that privilege to collaborate with all of these people and all of you. But I feel like we're meeting a new friend, and we're not sure if they're a friend yet. Like this piece feels like, okay, because, there's I guess I started in thinking about technology and the objects of the tech all as integrated and equal parts as the choreography and the dancers and the music. I'm trying to think of like, what are your building blocks for this piece? Sometimes it's steps, right? It's like pas de bourrée and a glissade and an extension, and sometimes it's other things, partnering, collisions, things over the back. This piece, the components to build with are like a step, a fall, a save, a roll, a hop, a wire, a trumpet, the horn, the sound, the visual, the pixels, the light. So I was kind of thinking more broadly about integrating many of the elements that you see on stage and that you feel through the space. So kind of thinking that I'm trying to move to the place where they're less like props, but I'm trying to find the space where we allow you to see the really kind of down and dirty task-based ideas that are embedded in all of my work, but you see them in very like romantic and very accelerated ways in other works. But in this piece, we're trying to show you the task-based in kind of really straightforward way, I suppose. So I'm trying to invite that in.
So let me ask about a particular moment in the table section. So the first solo and the quartet, the camera image is inverted from the dancers, and then the second soloist, it's the same. So you've made a very subtle choice that doesn't necessarily call attention to itself, but offers us something different visually. And could you talk about the kind of experimental process of the discovery of how it builds on your choreographic ideas?
There's something about like refining something, which I do in dance often, to its simplest form, or maybe not simple, but like most singular, like finding the kind of essential element, and then multiplying it, reiterating it. Mm-hmm. So I've spoken for a few years about iterative process. So my dance practice when I'm making a piece is a lot of reiteration. I'll kind of be moving and I respond once I'm moving and I'm finding my shoulder and my hand. Now my foot's moving. I don't know why my right heel's moving. So I just kind of pay attention, and then I can kind of lock in like those are like my kind of systems. And now I'm just playing with them, and I can start to play with the time. So I think things can be like, but it's just shoulder, heel, foot, hand, right? So this is kind of, I think at heart, I'm really truly a dance maker, and it just feels like that kind of logic of like one thing and then kind of multiplying and then starting to amplify it, but allowing us to see the function and effort and the mechanics of something, and that creates a time signature, and we can build on that and structure that. And I think that same thing is happening in the digital, right? So we kind of refine it to one thing or one camera angle, and then the next thing is like, show it from the side, show it from above. And right.
Can you say something about what you're doing in the booth while we're seeing what we're seeing on stage?
Besides freaking out?
Yeah.
It's so hard not. I love to perform, and
but you have your elements of liveness and risk that are showing up on the monitors. Maybe say something about that.
Yeah, definitely. So I immersed myself in trying to learn some coding and programming skills during my MFA experience recently. I still have a genius collaborator, Peter Martell, who is working with me side by side for this piece. So we've really worked in tandem for this work. So I learned a lot. I learned like 18 different programs, and I narrowed down to the 3 that I love. So I've been building a lot of my own digital programs and projects, and they're all based with the live body. They're all real time, and you can do them yourselves, or we do them on stage, but it's always kind of the essential to use a live body, have a camera or something very simple, catch it, track it, and then I do these digital alterations, modifications to it. And sometimes you can put it on a sequence and you can tell the computer, like at a certain point, to just like do that and then do that. And then when we're in the work and in the studio, it feels less attached, right? It feels like it's kind of happening at the same time as opposed to happening because of. So I'm set up and in that booth up there for the show, and Peter has made this amazing app on my iPad. So I have all these sliders. So for each time the digital network changes, I'm actively moving it and responding it or slowing it or speeding it, or I have one that sees, because it's catching it through a camera, it sees everything it's seeing as pixels, so then I can take the pixels and tell it to see the pixels and then put space between the pixels. So when you see the body kind of like fracturing and splitting, it's just taking the pixels and the light and like blowing them up or shrinking them down or moving them around or having them chase each other. But I can like slide it and kind of play with that. So it feels less automatic, and I feel like it's a little partnership through this digital interface, I guess, right?
So the other, and I think the last question I want to ask you about is, I saw it yesterday afternoon, and then I saw it last night, and I was like, oh, it changed.
Fresh out of the kitchen.
And then I saw it again tonight, and it's changed. And I just was thinking about seeing a work with an audience, you get new information as a choreographer. But with this, you've added all these extra elements that it's not just like, how does it feel that the dancers are relating to the audience, but it's also like the time with the technology changes it. So could you say something just about what it's like to be tinkering? It's premiered, it's beautiful, but you still, I can tell, are tasting the flavors of it. And I wonder if you could say something about, is that familiar that you want to keep playing with stuff? How are the dancers feeling about you saying, hey guys, I have this new idea?
Right, the audience already knows. They actually, the dancers and the team sort of figure out what they've gotten themselves into pretty quickly in my rehearsal studio. So it's like, it's a very, they're just the most gracious, wonderful, generous people. I really, I'm just so humbled by this whole experience. To be working with people and to have them vulnerable and courageous and daring and inspired and wild and risky. And I mean, what are we doing in dance? It's just very humbling and beautiful to be just in a room with people, being nice and trying to make stuff. It's amazing. So, okay. So I guess, you asked in your question too, like, what does the time with technology do? And I just kind of pull into that the word time, I think, is really what I think this is about. Sometimes a change, I think the work, and it is familiar. You call it changing things, and I think I don't know if it feels like that. It feels a little bit more to me like it's responding to time, right? Like I kind of, I talk fast, I move fast, I think fast sometimes, and I think I come into the studio and kind of like, I'm just noticing like when the fall happens, when the step happens, when the response is. So I think I continuously dig in from a perspective of the time that things are taking, and with the digital, maybe you see it more, but I'm just kind of trying to shove things together.
Clarify, refine, maybe not
Yes.
change. Yeah.
I think so. I think so. I mean, things do have to change sometimes with a new work, and as you want to get the momentum and the propulsion going, and like have the real spirit of the work. So, of course, but I think there's something about the kind of sensitivity of time that is key, and it's the responsiveness of the dancers to each other, to the music, and to the screens and whatever else is going on. And if it feels kind of like everything's happening kind of side by side, I just kind of move things around and say, hold back a little, rush, wait till they do it, and don't do it until they do it. So kind of sometimes those things make something look very, very, very different. It can be just a few little responses, right? But yeah.
So I guess that says, come back again, see what you notice.
Yeah, if you didn't like it tonight, you might like the matinee.
Thank you for bringing this work to us and offering us
You brought me and invited me, so I just am so grateful. So thank you, Pam, and thank you, Maura, and to everyone who has been here enduring what I brought into the Duke this week. I'm forever grateful. These are like very, very special. It's a very special place for a lot of us, and it's been a very special place for me, obviously professionally, but personally, for many, many, many years. So it's just a total gift and honestly a dream come true. I mean, can we believe we're sitting here doing a talk back in the new Duke? I cannot believe it. All right. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.